You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Most of our listeners who deal with legacy privileged access management products know they tend to be expensive, difficult to deploy, and hard to use. Keeper Security is the answer. Keeper's Zero Trust solution delivers password, secrets, and connection management in one easy-to-use platform. It's fast to deploy, agentless, clientless, and has no implementation fees. Plus, Keeper is FedRAMP authorized. That's why we trust Keeper to prevent breaches and gain full control over privileged users. Visit keeper.io/cyberwire to schedule a quick demo. That's keeper.io/cyberwire. And thanks to Keeper Security for supporting our podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CyberWire's Research Saturday. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is our weekly conversation with researchers and analysts tracking down the threats and vulnerabilities, solving some of the hard problems, and protecting ourselves in a rapidly evolving cyberspace. Thanks for joining us.
Black Basta, I tend to see them as being one of the newer ransomware groups, but they've been around since 2022. They're operated by a group that we call Cardinal, and that does mean that they're kind of one of the elder statesmen now in the ransomware universe.
That's Dick O'Brien, Principal Intelligence Analyst with Symantec's Threat Hunter team. The research we're discussing today is titled Ransomware Attackers May Have Used Privilege Escalation Vulnerability as Zero Day.
They were one of those groups that kind of made an immediate impact. They hit the ground running, so to speak. They mounted a lot of successful attacks right from the off, which led to a lot of speculation about who these people were. They were obviously cybercrime veterans in the way that they seemed to be able to immediately build a successful operation. And there was some speculation that maybe some of the people involved were formerly involved with the old Conti ransomware group, which is one of the biggest ransomware operations in the world for a long time. I guess the thing that characterized the Black Basta attacks initially was that they had a very close relationship with the Quackbot botnet. And Quackbot was one of the biggest malware distribution botnets operating for a long time. Essentially what they did was they sent malware, they sent loader-laced emails using the botnet to tens of thousands of people every day, and then they would sell off access to interesting targets to groups such as Black Basta. And for a long time, every Black Basta attack we investigated, or indeed every one that we heard about, began with a Quackbot infection. So they seem to have a very close relationship with Quackbot. And but then Quackbot was subject to a law enforcement takedown last year, and this led to a lot of speculation as to what was going to happen to Black Basta, because Quackbot was kind of like the last man standing in terms of these big malware distribution botnets. All of the other ones had been disrupted before that, and we were wondering whether this was going to be the end of Black Basta because they were so reliant on Quackbot. But they've come back, they've rebuilt their operation, and they seem to have established a relationship with attackers who use the Darkgate malware, which is often used as a precursor to Black Basta. So they seem to have found another source of victims. The Darkgate people are probably selling on access to Black Basta. So now they kind of had a quiet period after the Quackbot takedown, but they're back in business now to the same level, more or less, as before.
Well, let's dig into this specific research here. I mean, there's a couple of interesting wrinkles. Can we first talk about the exploit tool itself? I mean, what seems to be going on here?
The exploit tool it's a privilege escalation exploit tool. So by running it, it allows the attackers to run as an admin, and that obviously gives you an awful lot more power than running commands as an ordinary user. It exploited a vulnerability that was patched by Microsoft back in March 2024. Now, we only discovered the exploit tool after the patching, but we found some evidence to suggest that this tool was created long before the vulnerability was patched, and that this group may have been using it as a zero-day vulnerability. So, to explain the exploit, the root cause of the vulnerability lies in the fact that there is one Windows file, verkernel.sys, that has a null security descriptor for any registry keys it creates. However, its parent has a creator owner access control entry for its subkeys. And what that means is that it assigns the current user, which in this case is the attacker, as the owner of any new subkey created by the file. So originally, ordinarily, unprivileged users can't create a subkey in this fashion. So the attackers then abused this fault to create their own registry key where they set a debugger value as pointing towards their own exploit tool. And then they triggered the exploit by making a call to the report fault API, and it launched their executable, their exploit, because that was the file that was specified as the debugger key value, and voila, they're running with admin privileges. That's essentially how it works. The evidence we had that it was being used as a zero-day are timestamps. We found two versions of the exploit tool that had timestamps that predated the patching. Now, timestamps are not the final smoking gun in evidence and that they can be faked. But having said that, we can't really see any real motivation in this case for the attackers wanting to fake the timestamps. So we suspect chances are it was being used as a zero-day for a while.
We'll be right back. Identity architects and engineers, modernize your identity systems with Strata. Integrate legacy apps with any IDP, ensure seamless identity failover, and apply MFA without touching app code. Strata offers robust, efficient identity management, reducing tech debt and enhancing security. Gain peace of mind and operational efficiency with Strata's comprehensive solutions. Visit strata.io/cyberwire, share your biggest identity challenge, and enjoy free AirPods Pro. Optimize your identity solutions today. Visit strata.io/cyberwire. And our thanks to Strata for being a longtime friend and supporter of this podcast. It's really an interesting insight here in your research. I mean, as you point out, when Microsoft released this patch back in March, they said that they had no evidence of any exploitation in the wild, and there's no reason to suspect that Microsoft were being disingenuous about that. But these things are fluid. You know, your research shows, as is sometimes the case, that turns out perhaps somebody was.
Yeah, I mean, it has been known to happen. It's a case of if nobody knows about it, well, then they're not going to be aware of it. Usually when in the wild exploits are reported on patching, it's because somebody has discovered that in the course of an attack investigation and reported it to Microsoft. But in this case, it seems that somebody discovered the vulnerability independently and reported it to Microsoft, but the attackers have probably found it themselves prior to this.
What else can you tell us about this group in terms of, is there any specificity in who they seem to be targeting, what they're after in particular, those sorts of things?
There's nothing specific in terms of who they are targeting. What they really want is somebody who will pay the ransom. They're your typical ransomware group in that respect. So they're looking for large organizations who they think have deep pockets, and they will go after them. It's slightly unusual a group in a way in that we think they're mounting all of the attacks themselves. We've never seen any evidence of them advertising for affiliates operating a so-called ransomware as a service, although some third parties have suggested this, but we've never seen anything to back that up, and that's unusual enough in this day and age. Most ransomware groups tend to use the franchise model.
Any insights on how successful they are? Or do we have a view into any cryptocurrency wallets or anything like that?
I think this is something we wouldn't track ourselves. There are other specialists in it. But the fact that the group has been around for so long and has been so active would probably suggest that they're making some serious money out of it. Usually you will find ransomware groups who aren't kind of leveraging their tools to the full extent. They give up pretty quickly and move on to something else.
I see. So what are your recommendations then for folks to best protect themselves here?
The recommendations, I think it's the same as with any competent ransomware attacker. So it's not just Black Basta. Number one is be very aware of how a typical attack unfolds and then try and build your defenses around that. So right now, vulnerability exploitation is the main route into affected organizations. It was botnets like Black Basta that I mentioned there earlier. But now what you're seeing is there are exploit brokers who are identifying useful vulnerabilities as they're patched and launching scanning campaigns pretty much straight away after the vulnerabilities patch is released to identify unpatched systems. And then they're selling on access to ransomware groups like this group to infect them. That's the primary infection vector for ransomware at the moment. So obviously prioritizing keeping your software updated and having a good patching policy is key to preventing infection. And then it's a ransomware attack is a multi-stage process, and there's a lot of different steps and tools that need to be involved for it to be done successfully. And educating yourself on what the steps are will probably help you mitigate any risk. So be very careful about who has access to administrative credentials, implement two-factor authentication wherever you can, things like one-time passwords and stuff like that. And also pay very careful attention to what software is being used on your network. Increasingly, attackers are relying on legitimate tools to perform nefarious activities, in particular remote management software and remote desktop software. Any unauthorized installations of things like that on your network should be raising big red flags.
Our thanks to Dick O'Brien from Symantec's Threat Hunter team for joining us. The research is titled, Ransomware Attackers May Have Used Privilege Escalation Vulnerability as Zero-Day. We'll have a link in the show notes. Quick question. Do your end users always work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? If the answer is no, then my next question is, how do you keep company data safe on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device, because it solves the problem traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at onepassword.com/XAM. That's onepassword.com/XAM. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. If you like our show, please share a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to cyberwire@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K Cyberwire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your teams smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Stokes. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Brandon Karpf. Simone Petrella is our president, Peter Kilpie is our publisher, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next time.